Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Was that an accurate statement 4 months ago?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated. We're watching over them, and we're holding that issue.
Day 9 of the war, on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
The same man, the same deception. 4 months after a hollow promise of surrender, the tragic toll continues as bodies keep coming home. Yet he returns with his hand outstretched for more money. Was he ever telling the truth back then?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated. We're watching over them, and we're holding that issue. If they don't give them up at the table, there's other ways we can take them away.
Early in the conflict
Iran will
on
never
day
have a
3,
nuclear
Mr.
weapon.
Secretary, early in the conflict, day 3, you said one of those core objectives was to, quote, destroy the missile threat. And as you restated on day 5, to, quote, obliterate Iran's missiles and drones. Those were clearly and repeatedly stated core objectives of the campaign, which 4 months ago you declared had been completed victoriously with every single objective achieved. Were those objectives achieved 4 months ago?
No one ever stated that every single missile was gone. Ultimately, combat ineffective means they're not able to dig them out of their UGFs and shoot
Had
at
the
us.
missile
It
threat
doesn't mean they
been
don't have
defeated
underground
4 months
facilities
ago?
where they put missiles in them and hold on to them because they're the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. So we never expected they would stop having capabilities to shoot. The question is at scale against an opponent like the United States of America, which went toe-to-toe with them and Iran couldn't.
You stated on March 8th, day 9 of the war, on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective, and it remains so.
So just to review, you will not answer whether your statement made on the 14th day of the war that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective was a truthful statement to the American people as you sit here and ask for tens of billions more for the conflict.
Senator's time has
Had a historic and effective military campaign against the largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Won't answer the question.
They never
Senator
get a nuclear weapon,
Peters
Senator.
Under oath and demanding nearly $70 billion, he still dodges a simple yes or no about his so-called victory. Instead, he deflects to nuclear threats and deliberately runs out the clock. It's pure, unadulterated spin from a secretary who sold this nation the lie of a finished war. If this hits home, smash that like button and drop your take below.
Thank you all for your testimony. And General Kane, let me just begin by expressing on behalf of all Georgians our immense gratitude and admiration for the service members who are making tremendous sacrifices and conducting themselves with extraordinary selflessness and professionalism on behalf of the United States and our state's unified condolences and grief for the families of the 4 killed in action and our hope for a swift recovery for the nearly 100 wounded over the last 2 weeks. And thank you to you for your service to the nation. Mr. Hegseth, you're requesting roughly $68 billion for the department through this supplemental, correct?
67, yes.
And yesterday, your department stated publicly, quote, U.S. forces struck Iranian military command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defense systems to degrade Iran's ability to continue attacking commercial vessels. That was a press release from your department. Is that a broadly accurate characterization of ongoing operations?
That sounds broadly accurate, yes.
On day 14 of this conflict, Mr. Secretary, day 14, nearly 5 months ago, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. That was on day 14 of the war. Was that an accurate statement?
They didn't have a Navy any longer. It was completely sunk. Their missiles were buried underneath a lot of their underground facilities, and their defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. So as far as a military assessment of Iran's capabilities, it didn't mean by any stretch of the imagination absolute zero, but their capabilities
Mr. Secretary,
at the lowest level
you
they've been in a
stated
very
that
long time.
on day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you.
Ossoff doesn't storm in. He opens with solemn respect for the fallen and the wounded. Then he masterfully traps his target. He confirms the $67 billion request, then reads from Hegseth's own press release from just yesterday. American forces are still actively striking Iranian command centers, drones, and air defenses. Iran is still fighting. Only then does Ossoff weaponize the premature Day 14 claim of total enemy destruction. Scrambling. Hegseth retreats to his familiar script, boasting of sunken navies, buried missiles, and wrecked industries. All of it might be true, but it masterfully avoids the only question that actually matters.
14, Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no, was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the Iranian military is a historic military defeat, and they're ineffective in that context.
3 weeks later, you declared victory. That was now nearly 4 months ago. 3 weeks after you'd already said Iran's military was destroyed and combat ineffective, you said, quote, Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory. You said Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels in the Blue Water Navy, and they're gone. Their Air Force is completely combat ineffective, and they don't have a defense industrial base. So describe to me a country that doesn't have an Air Force, a Navy, or a defense industrial base, and I will describe to you a country that does not have an effective military. It can lob missiles.
Mr. Secretary, you stated 4 months ago that Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. Has Iran's military been, for the last 4 months, combat ineffective?
It's been set back not just years, but likely decades.
You stated we had, quote,
build at the level it did before, and not even close. It doesn't mean it doesn't have capabilities.
Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective.
Ossoff repeats the exact words, yes or no. Yet, Hegseth still refuses to utter them. This isn't a secretary confidently defending a grand military strategy. This is a man watching his own manufactured victory narrative crumble in real time beneath the weight of a single, unanswerable question. Once the illusion of his Day 14 claim begins to bleed out, Ossoff doesn't ease up. He drives the stakes straight into the later declarations, the ones Hegseth proudly paraded when the cameras were still friendly, and he firmly controlled the narrative. 3 weeks after prematurely announcing the annihilation of Iran's military, Hegseth had branded Operation Epic Fury a historic and overwhelming victory. He boasted that the Iranian military was rendered combat ineffective for years to come, assuring the public that every single objective had been achieved. Ossoff meticulously takes these claims apart, one by one. When the phrase every single objective is thrown back in his face, Hegseth immediately scrambles for the nuclear escape hatch. The real goal, he now desperately insists, was always just to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Obliterating the missile sites was merely the means to that end. But Ossoff refuses to accept this historical rewrite. He reads Hegseth's own words back to him from Day 3 and Day 5 of the war, where neutralizing the missile and drone threat was explicitly sold on the record as a core objective. Not a casual side note. Cornered. Hegseth finally concedes a truth he never intended to share. Every single missile was never actually gone. Combat ineffective, he frantically redefines, merely meant Iran couldn't dig them out and fire them at the United States at scale. That admission is devastating. It proves the sweeping victory he sold the American public was a phantom, vastly overblown compared to the sobering reality he is now forced to defend under oath. Closing the trap, Ossoff brings up Hegseth's infamous 60 Minutes appearance on Day 9, where he guaranteed an Iranian surrender. Asked if he stands by that prediction, Hegseth retreats again. He won't defend it, but he refuses to retract it. He simply changes the subject. This is the undeniable pattern. Whenever confronted with his own triumphant early rhetoric, Hegseth abandons it. He flees to safer ground, leaving his original lies sitting there unanswered and exposed. These grandiose claims that Ossoff systematically dismantled in that hearing room didn't just emerge out of nowhere. They were delivered with the full, devastating weight of the institution on April 8th.
Made history. From the strike that took out Qasem Soleimani, to tearing up the disastrous Obama-Iran deal, to the precision campaign that obliterated Iran's nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, to the decisive military victory we just achieved in Operation Epic Fury. No other president has shown the courage and resolve of this commander-in-chief. President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You see, in less than 40 days, one of our combatant commands, Central Command, CENTCOM, using less than 10% of America's total combat power, dismantled one of the world's largest militaries. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism proved utterly incapable of defending itself, its people, or its territory. We untied just a fraction of our strength, and Iran suffered a devastating military defeat.
That day at the Pentagon, under bright lights and a perfectly controlled media narrative, Pete Hegseth stood before the American public. Projecting the image of a proud conqueror, he unequivocally crowned Operation Epic Fury a historic and overwhelming victory. With absolute, unwavering certainty, he proclaimed that Iran's military had been rendered combat ineffective for years to come. He didn't just claim a tactical success, he painted a masterpiece of military perfection, insisting that the United States had achieved every single objective flawlessly, exactly on schedule, and precisely as laid out from day one. These were not presented as provisional estimates or hopeful projections. They were delivered to the public as settled, indisputable facts, a glorious chapter of war that had already been firmly closed. Yet, 3 months later, the stage shifted from a compliant press room to a stark, unforgiving congressional hearing. This same official sat under oath, stripped of his triumphant backdrop, squirming before a devastatingly simple question from Senator Jon Ossoff. Were those words actually true? Hegseth's outright refusal to answer is the starkest measure of the deception. When you sell a nation the grand illusion of absolute victory, every subsequent casualty, every dropped bomb, and every demand for more funding must be justified against the immense weight of that initial arrogance. The reality on the ground today is undeniably grim and entirely at odds with Hegseth's manufactured triumph. We are now in month 5 of a grueling, bloody war that he explicitly declared finished. According to the Department of Defense's own press releases issued just hours before the hearing, American forces are still actively bombing Iranian command centers, obliterating missile sites, and hunting down air defenses. The enemy, supposedly combat ineffective, is still relentlessly launching violent strikes on commercial vessels in strategic waterways. Most tragically, in the 2 short weeks leading up to this hearing, 4 Americans were killed in action and nearly 100 more were wounded. Those casualties, the shattered lives, and the flag-draped transfer cases bleed right through the fragile, cynical facade of Hegseth's premature triumphalism into this horrific gap between a fabricated narrative and a rising body count. Hegseth now has the sheer audacity to insert a request for $67 billion to funding. The man who boldly declared the job done on an accelerated timeline is now demanding that taxpayers underwrite the brutal continuation of a phantom victory. He desperately craves the historical glory of a triumphant narrative without carrying an ounce of the lethal accountability that comes with it. This is the true hidden cost of premature victory laps. The money and the blood keep flowing long after the cameras turn off. But Senator Ossoff refused to let him escape into the bureaucratic fog. Ossoff didn't resort to theatrical outrage or cheap name-calling. He executed a cold, surgical dismantling of a lie by simply reading the secretary's own words back to him and demanding a definitive yes or no. Ossoff trapped Hegseth in a prison of his own rhetoric. Hegseth pivoted, deflected, retreated to safe nuclear talking points, and filibustered desperately until the clock ran out. He cowardly abandoned his victory language the very moment it was placed under the pressure of truth. That deafening silence, that refusal to own his words, was the most damning verdict the hearing could have possibly produced. If you want to stay informed on the relentless exposure of officials who gamble with human lives and lie to the public, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave your verdict in the comments below. The record is public. The questions remain.